Alas, poor Yorick. I didn't know him at all. You know what? Given my niece's wedding theme, I probably should have offered this as a decor piece, but I forgot that I had it. Although we ended up with a good chunk of the leftover decorations, so that's fun. I also ended up with this. The noise in the background is my mom's phone going off in her room. I also have a skeleton bunny. Because I'm weird. There, now at least it's in frame. So, death in One Piece. Unfortunately, throughout the course of One Piece, there are quite a few characters who die. Now, a good chunk of these happen in flashbacks, and some of them have also happened in, current time of the story or in some variation of it. We see it happen in real time. And that is something that is kind of like not a fun thing about One Piece is that like pretty much all the main characters have some type of death happen in their past. Now, this is not going to be talking about the characters who have seen death happen in their past, although I guess that does apply to some of them. This is going to be talking about characters who have died in regards to like major kinds of death. And I don't mean that they got stabbed or shot or, something like that. I'm going over kind of how they died, the reason they died, what they used their death for, and in some cases, what decision in this regard led to their death. And so the kinds of areas that I broke this down into, and yes, there are a lot of characters on this list who these categories cover multiple categories for the same character, for the same death. Except for characters who I guess have died multiple times, which really only applies to not anybody, because even though Brook is technically on this list because he did die, he has come back, but he has not died again. So, or at least not as of the recording of this video has he not died again. Not that I want Brook to die. To be fair, there's also the theory of like Brook will outlive all of the Straw Hats, and I'm like, well, I don't know about that. So, a lot of the different major kinds of death is in regards to dying in the name of a noble cause. There's quite a few characters who die using their last act as a way of, in homage to a noble cause. Also, sometimes tying to that, we also have dying to make a statement. Then there's also dying to protect someone or something. An item, a child, a friend, something like that falls in there. We also have senseless death of an innocent or of innocence, because that's unfortunately a large quantity of some of these things. You also have dying from illness or injury. This will get combined with a few things. Also, and like injury, I don't mean, they got shot. Injury as in like, they just somehow got hurt and that led to their death. One specific death is on that list for that. Illness is a little bit more of just like, it led to stuff. And then we have dying from your own stupidity or hubris. There's literally a chunk in this one that is just like, nope, that was that. Stupidity and hubris that led to those people's death. And there's some that it kind of lands on and it's just like, well, unfortunately. Now, to be clear, this does not include deaths that are of old age, because those people just died of old age. We don't know. They may have had like some type of a statement that came with it, but like we don't really know about that. And also ones that we don't really know exactly how they died or when they died. Like for example, Kalgara. We know Kalgara is dead, but we don't know if he died of old age. We don't know if he died probably fighting against the Skypians, in all honesty, but we don't exactly know how. And if that's the case, it would be, protecting something in the name of a noble cause. But But, like, again, we also know that, like, the Shandian chief from way back then is dead. We also know that, like, the god from way back then is dead. We know that the king from Nolan's kingdom is very dead, but we don't know exactly how they died. So those are kind of some of those categories. So these are going to be a little bit more of a rapid fire because a lot of these characters, we know how they died. Although some of them I'll be a little bit more specific just for how that leads to why that's a certain category. So let's start off with I have these in a rough order of the deaths that we find out about in the series, not the order that the characters died. Just the order that we find out about the deaths. Because, like, some of the stuff happens in flashbacks, some of the stuff happens in present day, and it kind of jumps around. So first off, we have Gol D. Roger. And his death falls under several categories. He was dying from an illness. We know this, whatever incurable cancer, whatever type of thing that he had. He turns this into dying for a noble cause and making a statement. He turns it into making a statement in the fact that he, tells the world about the One Piece and inspires this next generation to go out into the world, because I'm assuming it's kind of Roger's hope, to just cause a bunch of problems for the Marines. Fair. And the world government. Fair. But also to inspire someone to try not to go and find Laugh Tale and find the true history of what happened, and then hopefully find a way of disseminating that to the rest of the world. So that's where that falls. So he gets those categories. But what actually killed him is execution, but that's not what this video is about. We have Higuma the Bear. He's the one who kidnaps Luffy as a child. And he just gets eaten by a Sea King, and he just falls under dying from your own stupidity and hubris, because he probably knew that the Lord of the Coast was there, and still went out in a tiny little dinghy. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well for you. It didn't. Technically also didn't end the best for Shanks, because he lost his arm, but that's a whole other theory. That's a whole other theory there. But yeah, Higuma dies from his own stupidity and hubris. Next up, we have Shimosuke Kuina, and she dies from injury. Now, I technically guess you could put on here some type of a statement or noble cause, but not really, because it's not like she made a big comment about something and fell down the stairs. And I know that there's lots of theories in regards to, like, Kuina being Tashigi, which has been very disproven. There's other stuff about, like, other things that happened with Kuina. Varying conflicting backstories that we get in various types of canon for One Piece is a little bit not helpful with that. But so she just kind of falls under died from an injury. I guess it can be like a senseless death of an innocent, but to the best of her knowledge, it's not like someone was trying to kill her. Next up, we have Bonchina, who just falls under dying from illness. Whatever, anime mother disease that she had. Dies from that. Doesn't really have any, like, noble causes. She's raising her son, which is a noble cause, but that's not what kills her. Get that. And then we have Bellmare, Nojiko's mother, of course. Hers is literally just dying to protect someone. She is dying to protect her daughters. And to a degree, you can put making a statement in regards to the fact that it's like, screw you, Arlong. I am going to protect my daughters. And they are my daughters, regardless of whatever stupid paperwork says. And so she falls under that category. Then we have Hirluck. And he, again, has several other ones where it falls in the same category. He is dying of an illness. He is then also dying of poison. Sorry, Chopper. And he turns it into dying for a noble cause and making a statement for where he makes his way to the castle on Drum Island. And he has that whole big speech that he gives. And then blows himself up. But he has like the whole his whole comment is, a kingdom will be forgotten, a man will not be forgotten unless, never truly dies until he's forgotten. And those words are things that then inspire Dalton. and then down the line end up inspiring, Chopper, of course, and Kureha, and has kind of this thing that this backbone that the country of Drum Island has kind of been built on at this point in time, that the Sakura Kingdom has been built on at this point in time, are inspired because of what Hiruluk did. So there's like that whole concept there that kind of spreads through there. We have Nefertari Titi. Nefertari Lily is not on this list. Nefertari D. Lily, is not on this list because we don't exactly know how she died, and depending on what type of suspicion you want to go with, she may not be dead, or at least not entirely dead and be possessed by Imu. But we have Nefertari Titi, who died from an illness. Mother illness. Again, sorry, Vivi. Then we have Thatch, who dies from an injury, murdered by Blackbeard. Doesn't really die in the name of a noble cause or making a statement or anything like that. It's not like it was literally just stabbed in the back by Blackbeard, which doesn't really land on any of the other categories, unfortunately. Sorry, Thatch. Then we have Montblanc Noland, who was executed, but he dies in the name of like a noble cause and making a statement in the fact that he never gives up on the idea that Chandora is real, because he knows it was real. He knows that Kalgara and the Shandians and this, City of Gold and all of his friends that he made there were real. And he's aware of this, but he can't figure out where they went. And, he dies still believing in that. He's not going back on his word. They have the whole storybook about him being Nolan the liar, but he wasn't. So his die, he kind of falls under the dying making a statement and dying with a noble cause type of a thing. Sadly. Then we have Tom. And Tom, of course, has the dying making a statement in regards to, or at least to the best of our knowledge, Tom dies. That is his status at the moment, is that he is dead. We'll get to in a moment whose status changed because of more recent events. Tom dies making a statement in regards to Frankie and Iceberg in regards to being proud of what they make. Because if, you are a creator, you are an inventor, and if you don't care about your inventions and your creations, then who will? Type of a thing. And he dies making that statement, and he dies protecting Frankie and Iceberg by sacrificing himself to give them a pardon with the Sea Train, and then he takes the blame for building the Oro Jackson. So, you have that. Then, you have Clover, Olivia, and the other archaeologist of Ohara. And they die in the name of a noble cause, and they are also a senseless death of innocence. To be fair, the other citizens of Ohara that are killed because the ships get blown up because of Akainu are also senseless deaths of innocence, regardless of how horrible, Robin's uncle and aunt treated her. They were still senseless deaths of innocence. And the archaeologists die throwing all of the books out of the library and into the lake to try to protect them from the fire because they have a better chance of surviving in the lake. And their legacy survived because of Saul. Saul would have been on this list under this same category of dying in the name of a noble cause, making a statement in regards to helping Robin escape, and senseless death of an innocent. But Saul's not dead. He's not. He's hurt up in Elbeth in the trees right now, but he's not dead. So that's where those fall in. Then you have Brook and the Rumbar Pirates. Now, to the best of our knowledge, the first part of the Rumbar Pirates with Yorkie and his group, they died because of whatever illness they had, to the best of our knowledge, and then the other half of the crew die from poison, from the poison weapons. And I will give them this. They do go out making a statement, dying making a statement, because they spend their last bits of energy and their last few minutes of life singing Bink Sake into the tone dial, so that way it will record, so that way they have something for Brook, who will come back to life shortly, because of his devil fruit, they're betting on that. They're staking this on that, and that comes true, that he will then be able to take the tone dial that has the recording of Bing Sake in it, of all of them singing it one last time, being happy and joyful, as they all die around him, unfortunately. But so that way he can take that and take it back to Laboon and play it for Laboon, and Laboon will hear it one last time to know that his crew, his friends, did not forget about him. So there's that whole bit there that lands under that, in my opinion. And I mean, that's Brook's dream. That's his goal. Yes, he wants to help Luffy become the king of the pirates now, but he also wants to get back to Laboon. And I still think Bing Sake is going to have some type of a part in the way that everything plays out, but still, just haven't gotten there yet. Still sticking around on Thriller Bark for a little bit longer. We have Jigoro, who's one of the general zombies. He's the one that Zoro's shadow gets put into. And the reason he is on this list is because, A, he's one of the zombies that we actually know about how they died. There's a couple in here for that one. But we know how he died, and he died protecting his family. He died trying to protect his family from their enemies when they were attacking. That's how he went out. He went out fighting and protecting his family. So he falls under that category. Then we have Captain John, who we've learned a lot about, thankfully, thanks to the God Valley arc. We learned that he has the Jiki Jiki no Mi, or had the Jiki Jiki no Mi before he died. He doesn't have it as a corpse anymore. But he dies because of own stupidity and hubris, because of how horrible of a captain he was to his crew, that they committed mutiny and just killed him. And I'm like, yeah, that falls under hubris and stupidity. No statement, no protection, no noble cause, just his own stupidity led to this. Then we have Oars. And again, we kind of learned how Oars died, and he died from illness because of hypothermia. By the way, dyslexic person here, I somehow spelled hypothermia correctly when I was typing this out. And I double checked it, and somehow I had it correct, so I'm just proud of myself for that one. But he dies because of illness, but he also dies because of his own stupidity, because he is a freaking giant who is barely dressed and is somewhere out wandering around in a very cold area and just freezes to death, essentially. So, stupidity and hubris, and illness caused by the stupidity and hubris. Yeah, so there's that. And then lastly on Thriller Bark, we have Victoria Shindry, who my other video last week was very much tied into her. She dies from injury. We know that she dies falling off of the stage and succumbs to her injury that way. Very similar to, Kuina in that regard. Dies from that injury. And she doesn't really die making a statement, doesn't really die because of a noble cause or protecting anybody or anything like that. It's not her own hubris that does it either, I don't think. Yeah, she's kind of sad about the fact that she's no longer engaged, but that wasn't why she fell off the stage. She fell off the stage because it was an accident. And then she gets taken by Hogback and turned into a zombie. Sorry, Shindry. Happy ending. Your shadow is free and your body are free. So, then we get into stuff that happens or that we learn about during Marineford. So, we have Portgas de Rouge, Ace's mother, who dies technically because of an injury. She dies because of the fact that she holds Ace in her womb for, I think it's 20 months, which is 11 months longer, 10 to 11 months longer than you're supposed to hold on to a baby. But, keeps them in her body for that amount of time. And then ends up succumbing to how much damage she did to her body during that time frame. So it's dying from an injury, but it's also dying to protect Ace in that regard. And it's also a senseless death of an innocent. Because to the best of our knowledge, Rouge wasn't innocent. Yes, she was in love with Roger, but she was still an innocent woman. As far as we're aware, she hadn't done anything that would, should lead to her being wanted by the government, besides the fact of the man she fell in love with. I would technically qualify Roger as senseless death of an innocent, but I'm like, maybe not. I love you, Roger, but I don't quite know how that would land in that regard. But the other thing that I will tack on here is the senseless deaths that's the slaughter of the innocents that essentially happens when they are out looking for Rouge. When they are looking for someone who is possibly a woman who is possibly pregnant with the Pirate King's child. Is all of those babies and any of those women who could possibly be carrying the child. That there is that I will put onto this because that does apply here. Because that is just more senseless deaths of innocence for something that is punishing a mother and a child for the sins of the father. And given what we've learned about the world government, not that surprising. Unfortunately. Then we have Edward Newgate. Just Whitebeard. He's dying from an illness. Again, whatever mysterious illness we have. He dies protecting someone because he's showing up at Marineford to try to protect Ace, to try to save Ace. He's also protecting his other children that show up to try to help. He also dies in the name of a noble cause of saving his son, and also standing up to the Marines for everything that's going on there, and dying making a statement. Because, of course, one of the last things that he does is he has a proclamation that the One Piece is real. And that, again, ignites the fire in a lot of other characters to make them go after the One Piece. That leads to the next generation of the Supernovas. It leads to Bartolomeo and some of the other ones that show up down the line. So, again, making a statement falls under several of those categories. And then we have Portcullis D. Ace. Oh, God. Ace. I'm sorry. Ace dies trying to protect Luffy. Just straight up dies trying to protect Luffy. That is why he dies. That is how he dies. Technically, I guess stupidity and hubris could land there as well with Ace, unfortunately. Simply because of the fact that, like, they had the chance to escape. They had the chance to get out of there. And Akaido baited them and Ace fell for it. Unfortunately. And they could have gotten out of there, but they didn't. So, that can get thrown in there as well. Unfortunately, I guess. But that's what we have there. Then we got Fishman Island. So, we have Fisher Tiger, who dies from an injury. He dies because of the blood loss that he sustains from when they're attacked by the Marines when they're returning Koala back to her island. He does die making a statement, and as much as I love Fisher Tiger, he does technically die not 100% because of his own stupidity, but more of his own hubris. In the fact that they have the opportunity to save him. They have the blood on the ship, on the Marine ship, that is the right kind of blood that they need for Fisher Tiger to fix him, to help heal him, to give him the blood transfusion. And he refuses to take it. And the thing is I can't really blame him on this part, given everything that Fisher Tiger went through. As a slave, what he saw, what he went through, all that stuff. And with how much he hates humans. With Koala probably being the only exception to that rule at that point in time. With Koala being the only human that he probably wouldn't be able to say that he hates. And even though he has his crew around him, trying to convince him to take it, I think even Arlong is trying to convince him to get the blood transfusion because it would save his life. He still can't bring himself to do it because of how much he hates humans. He cannot let their blood into his body. And again, it's like, I can't blame him for that. I could probably see myself being in a very similar situation if I don't ever want to be in that type of a situation, but I can see where that would come from. And again, I really, really love Fisher Tiger as a character. But then we see the reverse of this where later on where Luffy is like, has no problem with accepting a blood transfusion from Jinbei, and Jinbei is more than happy to help with it in order to help Luffy after the fight on Fishman Island. So we have that. And then also part of Fishman Island, we have Queen Otohime, who very much top of the list there is senseless death of an innocent. Very much senseless death of an innocent. But we also have dying in the name of a noble cause. She is dying. She's assassinated by Horty Jones, but she is dying in the name of a noble cause and trying to help the people of Fishman Island. And she's also dying trying to protect something. She's trying to protect her country, her people. And she also kind of dies making a statement because she makes her children swear that they will not hate the person who did this. And of course, Shirahoshi knows that it was Horty. And she doesn't hate him for it. Because of what her mother says. Good God, girl. Oh, God. So there's a lot there that falls into that. As I said, there's several characters on this list that have a lot of things that line up here for these characters for like various reasons that apply to their death. I was also debating about doing demotivational and motivational deaths in this, and I'm like, that seems a little hard to try to pin down for some of them, because some of them it's very obvious. To other ones, it's like, well, it goes from one to the other, and sometimes they're not clear. Next up, we have Punk Hazard stuff. So, we have Virgo, who just dies from his own stupidity and hubris because he underestimates how strong Law is, and with Law and Smoker working together, which works, and then he gets sliced up by Law and then, like, pinned into the factory before it explodes. So Virgo is very dead. Just straight up stupidity and hubris that leads to that. And then we have Monet. And I do very much like Monet. I love her character design. I wish we got a little bit more information about her. And by a technicality, she is preparing to die in the name of a noble cause. She is preparing to detonate, detonation on one of the labs for Caesar on behalf of Doflamingo, on his orders. She is ready to do that. She is ready to die to do that. And for her, that is dying in the name of a noble cause because she believes in Doflamingo. And I even think Doflamingo doesn't necessarily want to sacrifice her in the long run. I think he does care for her as much as Doflamingo can care for anybody, but still. We also have dying trying to make a statement, her, showing her loyalty to Doflamingo, but we also have Monet dying because of her own stupidity and hubris, because she thought it was because she, let Caesar have her heart. Because I'm like, why in the world would you do that? That is just so stupid on every measure of the situation here. And he stabs it. He stabs it thinking that it's Smoker's heart, but it's not. It's her heart. And that leads to her death, which of course prevents the part of the lab from blowing up. So we get that. Then we get several flashback deaths in a row. So we have Don Quixote homing / his wife. So his wife is literally dying from illness and senseless death of an innocent. Is where Homing's wife lands. Or like those two. Homing is technically a senseless death of an innocent to a degree. I mean, they are both celestial dragons and they both grew up in that world. And we don't know specifically what they did, how they treated people before they decided to leave the world nobles and become regular and, forsake that and become regular humans. We don't know how they acted before then. That's one of the things. Same thing with Milzigard, we'll get to later. But for homing, it's a little more difficult. Yes, technically it is senseless death of an innocent, but it is also dying from his own stupidity and hubris, because as much as it's coming from a good place with him resigning as a world noble and taking his wife and his children and trying to help his sons realize that you are human. Just because you are a celestial dragon, just because you were born into this world, born into this part of the world, does not mean that you are better than anybody else. You are still human. And as much as that is a noble concept and a statement, he still does not think all of this through in regards to how he acts. They don't have protection. They don't have anything to try to help them if something happens. He, they're refused to be taken back by the world nobles or to have anybody send help. All of that stuff. Which of course leads to his wife's death and then eventually his own death. And so we have all of that, unfortunately. Where he's killed by his own son, where he's killed by Doflamingo. Then we get to Flevent and the rest of the Trafalgar family. So the, Lamy and their parents and the citizens of Flevent, they pretty much all land under injury/illness and then senseless death of innocents because all of that could have been prevented. They are slaughtered or trapped in the hospital and burned alive is probably what happens with Lamy, unfortunately. And of course, Law is the only one who makes it out. And he carries those scars. He still carries those scars to this day. How could you not? So he goes through a lot of that. We see those characters. We see them go through that. And it's just horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Very much innocent. Innocent's dying. Then we have Diaz Barrels, Drake's father. He just dies from his own stupidity and hubris by trying to challenge Doflamingo. I'm like, you're not gonna win this one. I can already tell you that. You're not gonna win this one. Yeah, he dies from his own stupidity and hubris. Then we have Don Quixote Rocinante, who dies, he dies in the name of a noble cause in regards to trying to save Law, but that also just falls under trying to protect someone. He dies protecting Law. He dies getting Law the op fruit so that way Law can, find a way to save his own life and, remove the Amber Lead from himself so he can survive. And he does. He lives for a while. I don't think we know Law is not dead. Kid is not on this list because we do not have a confirmation of Kid is dead. Same thing with Big Mom and Keitel. We do not have confirmation that they are dead. The same thing with some of the other characters. We don't know their status. And if we don't know their status, then I'm not putting them on this list. Although for side notes, if Kaido and Big Mom had died, and that was confirmed at some point in time, they die somewhere between fighting in the name of a noble cause because it's their cause that they view as noble and dying of their own stupidity and hubris. But yeah, Rocinante, Corazon very much dies in the name of protecting someone. He dies in the name of protecting Law. Then we have Gimlet and Rushin. Oh, good God. Gimlet and Rushin. Gimlet dies because of illness, obviously. And then Rushin dies because of heartbreak, but also injury because of what happens to her. And that's just all types of tragedy just shoved in together. And I'm sorry, Senora Pink. They get put there. And then last one for a flashback for a little bit, or at least finishing up Dressrosa, we have Scarlet, who is, of course, Rebecca's mother, wife of Kyros, blah, 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 blah. She dies of an injury because she's shot, technically lands under there. A senseless death of an innocent by a long shot. Oh, yes. And then dying to protect someone. She is out trying to get food to take back to Rebecca because Rebecca is hungry. And Scarlet gets shot in the process of that. So we have Vinsmoke Sora, Sanji's mother of the other Vinsmoke siblings. She is dying to protect her sons, technically also dying of an injury/illness because she ingests poison in order to try to protect them. And senseless death of an innocent. Hers is very much that. is the way that lands. She doesn't want her sons to end up being these not having access to their full emotions types of monsters that Judge wants to turn them into. She doesn't want that. And she essentially sacrifices herself in order to try to prevent that. Really only seems to work on Sanji, but she would still qualify that as a win, even if it cost her her own life, which it did in the end. So you have that. Yorl, Waterfallbeard, who is, of course, Jarl's friend, who died trying to protect the village when Big Mom was on her, or when Lin was on her hunger-paying rampage, the Semla rampage. He dies protecting the village from her. Sadly, that's where he falls. Then we have Mother Carmel, who just is kind of dying from her own stupidity and hubris, to a degree. To be fair, I don't think she knew what was going to happen when they gave Big Mom all of the Semla cakes on her birthday. Still didn't pan out well for Mother Carmel and the other kids, unfortunately. Oh, sadly. So we have that. Then we have Zeppo, Beppo's big brother. He dies in the name of a noble cause. He's out trying to, with Pedro, trying to learn about, they're the Nox, expedition party, Nox pirates, trying to gather information about the poneglyphs, and of course they end up in Totland, or of course they get caught, and dies in that regard. It is also senseless death of an innocent, is where he lands as well. Very much falls under that category. Then we have Pedro. Oh, Pedro. We have Pedro, who of course dies. In the name of a noble cause, he is, helping the Straw Hats get free, so it falls under protecting someone or something, is where that lands for Pedro. But it's also very much, a little bit of revenge against, the Big Mom pirates, a little bit there. But name of a noble cause in, bringing the dawn of the new world is where that lands for Pedro. Then we have, and I'm going to butcher this girl's name, and I apologize because we're getting into a backstory where I haven't actually heard the character's name fully pronounced correctly. Victoria Shiratan, something other. It's like Victoria Brospilton or whatever is what it translates to. This is the girl in Kid and Law's backstory that she is their first crush. That they both share a crush on her. Back in the kingdom that they come from, the island that they come from. And because I think she beat them up as kids and they developed crushes on her. And then she dies from injury because of gang violence. I would say she also falls under the senseless death of an innocent, is where she falls under for Victoria in that regard. That's what they have there. Then we get into the Wano deaths. And oh god, all the Wano deaths. So, starting off. Kozuki Oden dies in the name of a noble cause. He dies trying to protect his scabbards and to inspire, the citizens of Wano, all of that stuff. Dying making a statement, Oden was born to boil, all of that stuff. He does all of that. Falls under those categories. Very much so. I guess injury qualifies as well. He was boiled alive and then shot. Then we have Toki, again, dying in the name of a noble cause and making a statement. She makes her prophecy that, is what leads into, sits on Orochi's doorstep for the next 20 years, back of his mind, taunting him. Which, of course, just makes him super paranoid. All of that. We have Banzaboro, he's kind of the, assistant to Sukiyaki, but he ends up going and serving Toki and Oden at one point after they return, or after Oden returns. He kind of goes and, serves them as, one of their, not their retainer, but, someone else who's sworn to the family. He serves them. And again, he dies in the name of a noble cause. He dies kind of trying to protect them and to protect Toki and the children and all of that stuff. Protect those that he was sworn to. He dies, I believe, when they set Curry Castle ablaze. When Kaido has that done. Unfortunately, is where he dies. Then we have Kurozumi Higurashi, who just dies from her own stupidity and hubris because she thought it was a good idea to interrupt the battle between Kaido and Orochi. Or not Kaido and Orochi. That would have been a much less interesting battle between Kaido and Oden, and just ends up dead because of it later. It's like, she interfered with my battle. Nope, she's dead now. Deserves it. Then we have the 3 daimyo who dive in the cave. We have Fugetsu Omotsubi, Shimotsuki Ushimaru, and Uzuki Tempura, who are the 3 daimyo who try to go and fight against Kaido after Oden tries. And they die in the name of a noble cause. They die fighting Oden, or fighting Kaido, and they die helping Yamato escape. Yamato access their legacy. Then we have Shimosuke Yasu, who, of course, dies in the name of a noble cause. He dies protecting the rebellion and all of that stuff, and dies making a statement, all of that stuff. He falls very much under those categories. Also qualifies probably as like the senseless death of an innocent, unfortunately. Then we get into Ashura Doji. Dies in the name of a noble cause. He's protecting his friends to allow them, taking out the fake Oden, all of that stuff. Talked about a lot of these, the Wano characters I talked about quite a bit more recently. But, they land under those categories. Same thing with Izo. He dies in the name of a noble cause, fighting to free, they both die fighting to free their homeland, fighting to protect their friends, their family, all of that stuff. And along with Ashura Doji, I'm going to tack on the other samurai that tried to rebel against Kaido 10 years ago, which led to their death. Unfortunately, leads to that. Dying in the name of a noble cause, trying to protect their country, all of that stuff. Senseless death of innocence to a degree. Same thing with a lot of the other innocents in Wano who died because of this stuff, because of Orochi and Kaido and all of this. Also, just pretty much any of the, I'll get to that section in a second. Then we have Kurozumi Kanjuro, who dies fighting in the name of a noble cause. I can only put that there because it is a cause that he has been fighting for his whole life. But it's not noble in the fact, because it's him deceiving people who are truly his friends at that time. And he's still deceiving them throughout the course of 20-something years that they're around each other. And leads to Oden's death and Toki's death and so many other things. And so many problems that Kanjuro leads to. And dying from his own stupidity and hubris because he thinks that he can beat Kinemon. Nope, you can't. And thinking that Kinemon ain't gonna kill him. Kinemon will. Very much. Then we have Guernica, the CP0 agent, who dies. Technically, I have to put on here in the name of a noble cause because he is doing it in service of his government, of the world government, and interrupting the battle between Luffy and Kaido. But it's still kind of stupidity and hubris because, again, it's the same reason that Higurashi died. It's like, you interrupted a battle between Kaido and an opponent that he was enjoying fighting. That was bad. That was stupid. Why would you do that? Why? Type of a thing. That's where that lands. Just straight up. Then we have Kurozumi Orochi, who just is just a straight up, he dies making a statement or a hatement where he is just like, Wano will burn and all this other stuff, and I put a curse on Wano and all this stuff because of the Kurozumis and blah, 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 blah. And then he's just dying because of his own stupidity and hubris. Is how he dies. The reason he dies is, nope, you're just an idiot, Orochi. Straight up idiot. Then we have Absalom. Moving away from Wano, we have Absalom, who dies because of his own stupidity and hubris because he infiltrates Hachinosu, trying to get pictures for the World Economic Times, and just ends up getting killed by Blackbeard and his crew. Nope, you're just dead, Absalom. Sorry. Then we have Nefertari Cobra, who, of course, dies protecting Sabo, and dies in the name of a noble cause, protecting the will of D and giving Sabo information about, like, you have to find, Vivi and Luffy. There is a connection there, all of that stuff. So there's that connection there that they do. That, Cobra dies in the name of. And standing up to the world note, standing up to Imu and the Elder Stars. Again, I'm not necessarily his own stupidity, because he's pretty certain that he's going to die anyway. From the moment he starts asking questions, he's pretty sure he's going to die. So that's not stupid. That's kind of resigning yourself to that, unfortunately. That's what we get there. Also up in Marie Joie, very shortly after that, we have Don Quixote Milsigard, who is, of course, dies in the name of a noble cause because he is trying to protect something. He uses his power as a celestial dragon to protect Shirahoshi and her family, and then also to protect Leo and Sai when they attack Charlos and everything when he shows back up. So we have all of that going on there. For that, so he very much dies in the name of a noble cause and protecting something, someone and something, protecting Otohime's dream, all this other stuff. Not really hubris, because I'm pretty sure he's already resigned himself to the fact that this current path that he is on will probably lead to his own death. And I think he's already aware of that. And he's still willing to make that sacrifice. Which is just probably far more than I would ever be able to do. Then we get T-Bone. Oh, T-Bone. T-Bone. And given everything that we have ever learned about T-Bone, Tekking 101 had a very good video about this where he talks about T-Bone and what probably happened to T-Bone in this regard, that he probably died in the name of a noble cause for what happened. And he can do a much better explanation about that in his video than I can here. But, goes there. Then we have Clap, Kuma's father, and his is very much the senseless death of an innocent, which pretty much falls under the category of pretty much any of the slaves that the Celestial Dragons have that end up dead. The majority of them are just innocent people who have been pulled into this horrible fate that they had no choice in the matter, simply because someone grabbed them or a Celestial Dragon saw them and wanted them as a slave. And that's how they end up there. So pretty much all of them end up as senseless deaths of an innocent. For not just Clap and not just Kuma's mother, but all of them pretty much land there, which is very sad, but unfortunately true in this regard. Then we have another one that also applies to. We have Ginny. Ginny is dying from an illness, and it is the illness overall that ends up killing her. The sapphire scales that end up killing her. But she is dying to protect her child. She dies knowing that being out in the sun and all of this traveling will lead to her death. She dies getting Bonnie all the way back to Sorbet, back to where Kuma will be, back to their home. She dies doing all of that to protect her daughter. And Kuma is not dead yet, but technically Kuma would fall under this same category, because it is his choices of protecting Bonnie that essentially have led to his semi-death as a fairly mindless cyborg at this point in time. But he's not dead yet. And then Ginny also qualifies as a senseless death of an innocent as well. Very much so. Very much senseless death of an innocent is the way all of that lands. Then we get Vegapunk. And Vegapunk, as is happening in the anime now, where we're getting his message, and we just saw his death, is dying in the name of a noble cause and dying to make a statement. His death leads to his statement being released to the world. His message being released to the world is what his death does. And that is literally how that goes. To be fair, Vegapunk, the physical version of Vegapunk that we see, at the time that he dies, isn't 100% aware that this plan is even in motion. Necessarily. He knows that there's something that his past self did that he then wiped his memories of. Him and Shaka and Pythagoras wiped their memories of. And then it's like, oh, what are we going to do now? Okay, apparently we have to die, is what happens there. So we get that. Very much statement, very much all of that. So we have that. Then we have St. J. Garcia Saturn, who is just straight up dies because of his own stupidity and hubris. Every single one of his actions in regards to not having Emmet destroyed, in regards to not just finding a way to get rid of Kuma, and just toying with Kuma for the rest of his life, all of this stuff, all of it, is what leads to Saturn's eventual downfall at the end of Egghead Island, where he is just dustified after he makes Emu mad enough that Emu's just like, yeah, no, I'm taking my power back now. Enjoy your however many centuries that you had of not dying, of not aging, coming back on you very quickly. So all of that dies completely because of its own stupidity and hubris. No argument there. No argument there. Fully done. Last little bits here. We have Tritoma, former empress of Amazon Lily. She dies because of the love sickness. We know that other empresses have died of the love sickness, but we haven't seen any of them. We know that Gloriosa had it. Same thing with Shocky. Hancock has it for Luffy. But Tritoma is the one that we know of that died of it. Then we kind of get into Elbath and the flashbacks. So, we have King Harald, who dies in the name of a noble cause. Yes, dies in the name of trying to better Elbath. No argument there. But he also dies because of his own stupidity and hubris. And again, I like Harald, but he is dying because of his own stupidity and hubris because he is trusting the world government when he has been shown time and time again that they cannot be trusted, that they are not going to do what you think they're going to do. They're just going to cause problems for you in this regard. And we see that. And that is what leads to his death at the hands of his own guards, where they stab him. Probably because he gets Domi reversied by whatever official has shown up at that point in time when we get to that part of the flashback, when he gets Domi reversied, or whatever. The guards get Domi reversied. Probably him. Which, of course, leads to his death. And then we have Estrid, who is dying because of an injury / illness. She dies because of like a mental illness in regards to the way that she acts after Loki is born, which also is part of dying from stupidity and hubris because she dies because she essentially she believes that she has these visions about like her son killing Harald, and is just horrible to Loki this whole time, and just fixates on this as opposed to like, I don't know, maybe part of the reason this keeps you had these visions in the first place is because you freaking threw your son off of a tree branch like not even 10 minutes after he was born and into the underworld, and then completely denied him any type of love if we want to go the Voldemort route of things. Although I know Loki is nowhere near Voldemort, but still. All of that stuff leads to her own death. Her brother's death is completely from his own stupidity and hubris because of the way that he treats Loki. he gets chucked off the tree. I'm like, yeah, I can't really blame Loki there. Then we get into kind of the last two that we are aware of at the moment. We have Don Marlin, who assumedly, I'm assuming he dies trying to protect Shaki, because Ochoku has to end him at some point in time in order to get to Shaki, because he wouldn't have been able to get away from Hachinosu without Don Marlin or someone else noticing if he didn't take Don Marlin out in the process. So I'm assuming he died protecting Shaki / betrayal. So we get that. We also have Shanks and Shamrock's mother gets thrown in here as well as senseless death of an innocent, unfortunately. Very much senseless death of an innocent. But she also dies trying to protect something and making a statement in the fact that she is begging Dragon in order to protect her children, or to try to protect her children. And he tries. He goes and he tries. We know that it doesn't technically end up going to the way that he wanted to, but it does. Shanks ends up safe. Dragon doesn't know that, but Shanks still ends up safe. And pretty much any of the citizens of God Valley and the other ones that were brought there as the other rabbits for the human hunting contest, just all of them die as senseless death, as just slaughter of innocents, fully and completely. Same thing with the citizens of Lelucia that are taken out by the giant sky cannon Mother Flame. They all qualify as senseless deaths of innocents, pretty much. Even to a degree, Seki and Komain technically fall under that category. As horrible rulers as they are, that is what leads to their death, is the destruction of the kingdom. So we have that. And then finally, I am putting Rox on here. Now, there's the whole theory is that, like, Rox is still alive somehow, that he's somewhere still out there, and we just haven't seen him yet because Oda is saving that for a big twist somewhere down the line. Could still happen, not going to argue with that. But from the way that we have seen this so far, I'm going to put Rox on this list. And I'm going to put it down as him protecting someone, because he dies protecting Eris and Teach. He dies trying to protect them so that way they can escape, and this leads to him being Domi Reversied by Imu. And yes, it is Garp and Roger working together that end up taking Rox out. No argument there. But Rox is put into that position of being Domi Reversing in the first place because he is protecting his family. He gives up any other part of his dream that he had at that point in time in order to try to protect his wife and son. Because at that point in time, their lives meant so much more to him than this dream that he had. And I think he would be very disappointed in Teach if he saw the way that Teach has acted. No. Rox is not a senseless death of an innocent, by far. No way. Not given everything that we have seen him do, he is not a senseless death of an innocent. But I don't think he would approve of the way that Teach has been acting. Of the way that Teach has acted in regards to killing Whitebeard and killing Thatch and a bunch of other stuff. I don't think Rox would approve of that. But that's not what this video is about. His falls under death by protecting someone. Because by the time he is Domi Reversied, he is no longer in control of his own actions. And he is trapped inside of that, and he is begging Roger and Garp to end him. Because he doesn't want to hurt anybody else anymore. He doesn't want to cause any more pain at that point in time because he is out of control because of Domi Reversied. And I think I got pretty much everybody, or at least all of the major ones. So that's what I have here. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!